Welcome to the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Hi, you guys. It is time for the Sonia Buchanan Show. As we always do, give you an intro into the discussion. Just a heads up, I was out doing my morning walk, and I had a discussion that I wanted to share with you as a perspective. The name of the podcast is called Perspective and Direction. And listen to the entire message because there are a plethora of things that I shared this morning, but I wanted to get it out with you. So please, again, forgive the huffing and puffing. I am walking and running doing this podcast session. So the next discussion you will hear is Perspective and Direction. Bye, you guys. Great day, everyone. It is time for the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Listen, you guys, I decided to do a podcast, a show today, and our title is called Perspective and Direction. But let me tell you, I did a previous podcast and I was out at the park at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. Well, guess what? We're back. And it's early in the morning. It's about 5:30. And I woke up this morning about 3:30, 4 a.m. And this word resonated. It was very strong in my spirit this morning. And it's called perspective. And I gave a meaning of the word perspective. And if you're very English in word knowledge, you know what perspective is drawing a conclusion of a matter, of a scenario, right? So anyway, so you guys excuse me for the huffing and puffing, but when something is like really in me, I need to just get it out because I will forget by the time I finish walking because I will be exhausted. But I gave the word perspective. And today our podcast is called, the show is called Perspective and Direction. I was really trying to draw a conclusion on a matter. With so many things that's going around, communication is everywhere. People are communicating about things in so many different scenarios of what's going around globally. And a lot of communication. There's a lot of perspectives. There's a lot of narratives. There's a lot of conclusions. There's a lot of opinions. There are many emotional opinions. There are many emotional perspectives. And drawing the exact conclusion of a matter, of rightness, of what's wrong, or what's being communicated, is very important that you have to consolidate everything that you're hearing, everything that you're listening, consolidate it, put it in a bundle somewhere, and then sit for a moment, be quiet, and let your inward wisdom and knowledge draw a perspective. Because when you sit down for a moment and you're drawing a perspective within you, that is when the heavens, universe, your God, or your entity in what you're worshiping of truth will begin to speak to you. That is drawing the conclusion and the perspective of the correct communication. Okay? So you have to be careful right now. There's a lot of things that's going around and people are very emotional. And the emotions are expected. Of course, when humanity is being put to test and wars and bombs is flying over your head, why would you not be emotional? But I want to talk about something that, I don't know what to do sometimes in situations, how I can offer my assistance. And many of people who are out there saying, what could I do? How can I help? How can I assist in any situations when there's tragedy or when there is a shaking or where there's devastation everywhere? We ask that question. But to narrow it down to what you can do is bring your gifting, your living, and your purpose to surface. And that's the best giving that you can do. It is solid. Whether it's monetary, whether it's communication, whether it's praying, whether it's giving your heart and loving the situation. It doesn't always have to be tangible, but what it can be that is a direct and a perspective of correctness is give your gifting. That is solitary. Whatever your gifting is, whatever your purpose is, whatever that you do, that you have in your knowing that is what you were called to do, that is something that you can give as your perspective, and it's never off. It's never off balance. It's always direct, and it's always accurate, okay? But let me talk to you all about something that I want to share, because there are so many different narratives that we can come to a conclusion that you may not be sure of. And I like to share some of the things that I have experienced. Maybe it'll draw a conclusion in your world, however you perceive this or however you think of it. But inwardly, most time when you're reading something, you think about your course of life and how it's impacting you personally. So I don't want to talk to you directly saying, change this, change that. No, this is more of a podcast. It's talking about my experience, how I draw a solid conclusion, a perspective in the right direction, and knowing that it's the right direction. There was an incident, and I usually don't like to talk about some personal experience, especially when it involves other people. But before I did this podcast, I had to make sure that it was okay and to present this. Now, and I've never talked about it. This is the very first time I actually openly said something in regards to this. But I remember at a time in my life, I was getting ready for service, Sunday morning service, okay? And I was getting ready, happy, just, jamming, putting on my lipstick and everything, getting ready to be cute. Because, my service was always on camera. So I always sat in the front. So I did not want to look crazy on camera, sitting in the front without the right lipstick, As girls got to be cute on camera. But anyway, so as I was getting ready, I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, on my inward, now he says that my pastor was going to write me 2 checks. Okay, y'all. I am so nervous about even sharing this. But he said that the bishop was going to write me 2 checks, one for $200 and another one for $500. He was very specific, and in my mind, when I heard that, I thought, $700. I'm needing $10,000 for all my bills to be canceled. I was thinking the flesh way. Wow, he gonna bless me in canceling all my debt. That's how I was thinking. Now, and that's how a normal person would be thinking. You gonna give me some money to cancel everything. But it wasn't about me. It wasn't about canceling my debt. It wasn't about paying off my debt, paying off my house or anything like that. It was more so about the person who was sowing the seed. And so I said, okay. And I was excited. I was so excited. Now, this was the first experience that I have experienced before. And so I was excited, y'all. I said, I'm about to get $200 check and a $500 check. And I said, 5 plus 2 is 7. And I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to do with this $700? Well, I can put it in the savings account. This is how my mind was thinking, and who would not? Okay. So when I get to service and I'm just waiting for expectations, because I knew this was a divine instruction. And whenever there's a divine instruction, there's always a blessing. And I'm going to explain to you why is that. And I get to service and I'm excited. Service was over. And I'm sitting there waiting, because I always sat on the 4th row at the end seat. And I'm waiting for the checks. Waiting to be called to get the checks, get the divine instructions from God. Well, I remember the pastor walking off the stage. He turns around. He looks up at me. I'm waiting in expectancy, smiling like God spoke this morning. And I know this was supposed to transpire. He looks up at me. He turns around and walks off the stage. So my eyes is looking like, okay, maybe he's going to have somebody to come get me from the congregation. Well, that didn't happen. He never came and got me. The transaction never took place. And I never received the 2 checks. Nothing. That was the first time I've experienced something that God has spoken and it did not follow through. Not because of my lack of obedience in it, but because of the obedience and instructions from the person. Now, the person heard God because they turned around and looked at me. And I said, wait, hold up. I've never experienced that before. Let me explain something. Anytime when you give, you have the instructions to bless somebody, please do so. I'm going to explain something that happened to me during the same season. I was on my way to work and I'm rushing, trying to get to the work. I took the transit every morning. So it was raining, got to the transit. The train was sitting there waiting. I'm running. And as I'm running down the steps, I fall all the way to the bottom step and sprain my ankle. So I couldn't go to work for about a week. During the time that happened, TBN with Paul and Jan was having their praise-a-thon. And and I was sitting there thinking, wow, what a terrible time to fall down the steps, because this is the same week that my job decided they have canceled the actions of paying people for sick time. So we get no pay. So here I am thinking, okay, there's no pay for this entire week. Well, there was a particular minister that was preaching. I tell you who it was. It was Juanita Bynum when she was in her position as a prophet to the nations. And she was preaching. Oh, the power of God and the presence of the Lord was so saturated in my room when she was preaching. And I heard the Holy Spirit, my inward knowing again. And he says, I want you to sow a seed of $100 into her while she's preaching. So I got on the phone. The phone was busy. It took me a minute to get through. And I sowed seed. Now, this is not a message. This is not a podcast that's talking about sowing seed or any of that. I'm trying to explain perspectives in direction. Okay? And so I did that. Went to bed. The anointing of the Lord, the presence of the Lord was so saturated in my room, because back in the day when Paul and Jan was doing those praise-a-thon, they were so powerful. They were so anointed. The people that was on the stage preaching and delivering the word was so saturated with God. And the direction and the perspective that they gave to the nation at the time was so impactful. How I know? Because the presence will be coming from the screen off of their life and what they were speaking. And anytime when you're speaking the word of God, it saturates the heavens, and it saturates the perspective of the right perspective. That's what was happening. So the next morning I wake up, I get a phone call from my mortgage company. Now, this has never happened, which was the weirdest thing. And they said, Ms. Buchanan, the interest rates has fallen dramatically. We would like to adjust your interest rate to a lower percentage. We calling you to see if you will give us permission to do so. And I said, sure. You know, I like lower interest, that's good. I'll save some money monthly. And they did that. And I informed them I was at home with a sprained ankle. She said, that's no problem. We'll send a lawyer to your home with the proper paperwork and also the difference in a check. I'm sitting there with the lawyer. He gives me a check. And it's probably a little bit more, like $200 more than what I will receive during the time that I will be working that week. And I sat there because I'm experiencing this for the first time, and I'm showing it to you. And I said, oh, wow, that would cover my week off with no pay. I went to bed with the presence of the Lord saturated again from the direct perspective of coming from the one who gave the instructions that this was going to happen. I was much informed. And so when my pastor did not follow through on that instruction, I knew that there was something that I needed to learn about how God operates and how he speaks to both counterparts. He doesn't just, especially me, if you understand how I am, God will have to tell me this person is going to bless you or you're going to receive a blessing today. You just will know. And he is a communicating God. He is not one that'll leave you out there and you not know that he's talking, and you not know that it's not coming from him. You will know it's coming from the heavens, the God who created, because he spoke all these things into existence. Why would he not do the same when he wants to bless his children, his sons and daughters? Okay, not just his sons and daughters, those who have not come into the family. And so that was a lesson that I needed to learn, that sometimes, even though he gives the instructions, there is a time when people may not follow through on those instructions. This is where I want to come to you about perspectives and direction. Because if you are not getting the perspective and direction from your inward knowing, your solitude, you know that this is what you're supposed to do, stand on that. Man and woman have their own will. They have their own will. And I had to learn this the hard way. You being the person that's giving, blessing someone, and expected by someone to bless you back, that's up to the will of that person. But don't be dismayed. Make sure you follow the instructions that you get, that you know you're supposed to bless someone. And because there are times when it is not reciprocated, and that's where sadness, disappointment, depression, meaningless modes of nobody, that sad, feel sorry, petty, having a pity party comes upon you. And that is the reactions of that is not God's presence and his love. It's intended to get you to be in a sad, having a pity party. Sometimes it's that, to give you that moment where the person is not reciprocating, and it takes you into a zone that is not in the presence of God, who is all knowledge, who is all wisdom, who is all love, who is all goodness, who is all a blessing, who is all comforting. That's the presence of God. When I know when something is coming from God and coming from the Lord, it brings his nature. It brings his image. It brings his character. It brings his wisdom. It brings his knowledge. It brings this excitement. It brings this overzealous life is good. And you could just have one potato in the freezer or in the refrigerator, and all of a sudden God's presence come upon you, and you just have all these ideas, this knowledge, I can solve the world. I can be this creator of all things. That's the presence of God, because that's his nature. That is his characteristics. But when you're getting communication and you're not receiving that, you're just still in your blue, I hear you. Those are the words have not been directed divinely, given from God to bless you. Now, I'm going somewhere because I don't want this podcast to be long, but I have to put a lot of things out there because I was experiencing something that I've never experienced before. Now, my pastor did not follow that instruction on his part. Now, I say that with confidence because I knew God. I knew the voice. I've never experienced that when he said something, it didn't follow through. Now, I want to say this. I don't know what God was trying to give to him. I didn't even ask. I didn't question it. And I personally did not care, because I followed through on my instructions. That's all that matters. And I continue to be blessed. Okay? So we are in a time now that communication is going everywhere. Just the perspectives, emotional communication. We don't know what's direct and divine and secured and solid perspective. But you can know that by sitting for a moment of quietness and getting it. So you won't be confused with all the communication that's flowing in the air. You'll know what communication is solid and designated for you. Not to say that the communication that is going everywhere is not for someone, but it may not be for you. Because I'm not one who say, well, she's saying this and she's saying that. That's not of God. But you don't know God. He is huge. You don't know what communication that a person is speaking and it's directed to somebody else. It may not be directed for you. It may be directed for someone else. That's why you have to know the perspective and direction that designated for you by the presence of God, by the presence of your knowing that is designated for you. I just want to really emphasize on that, because 7.8 billion people in the world, that's a lot of communication. And one person is not sent to 7.8 billion people in the world. But you are a blessing to one person, or maybe 10 or 20. And then there are people who are in positions that you're not supposed to be there, trying to bless people who are not to receive. Let me tell you how I know that to be true. I'm giving experience because, like I stated before in other podcasts, let me share this, and I'm getting ready to close the podcast. There was a time one Sunday evening I received an knowing message, and I was instructed to pick up someone that I met in a class that I was taking from service, from church. And I was instructed to go pick the girl up or her family and take them grocery shopping. But there was something different about this instruction. I was informed not to go to the grocery store for the person or for the family, but to go pick the mother of the house up and take her to the grocery store and let her shop. And my thoughts again, my fleshy thoughts, like, I don't have this much money in my account. I hope she don't need a lot. This is my thinking. And so I did that. I called her up and I informed her that I was instructed to come pick you up or your family to take you to shopping. So I did that. And I sat in front of the store as she shopped. And thinking, Lord, you know what I got in my checking account. So when we got to the register, I went to greet her. Of course, she didn't have any junk food in the cart. So I told her to go get some chips and popcorn and ice cream for her kids, because children are not going to be in the house without junk food and cookies. She said, are you sure? I said, are you going to be in the house without cookies and stuff? I said, go get some of that stuff for your kids. Not knowing how much this is going to cost. Well, we get to the register. She was pleased with everything that she got, that she needed. And it came up with half of the amount of money that I had in my checking account. So again, that was another confirmation of perspective and direction. It was solid. God knew my situation, and he also knew her situation, because I never asked God why he wanted me to pick her up. So I did. Took her home, and we sat in the car, and she says, my husband and I were sitting in the kitchen wondering how we were going to feed our kids the following week, because he lost his job and I had lost mine 6 months ago. So we were without any money. That was another confirmation. So not only a confirmation, it was so impactful, because I said it is so important that when you get an instruction, you follow through, because you don't know what God knows on the other end. You just go by faith. And because the instructions that you follow through could be doing something divinely for that family or for that person. It is so important, because it just is. I had no idea that she was dealing with financial situations, because she never gave me the appearance while we were in class. I thought she had it all together. She was so beautiful. Everything was always laid. I had no idea that she was going through a financial situation. But that, to me, this is after I suppose I had received the $200 check and the $500 check. God was teaching me something about the importance when he given instructions. Just follow through in faith, because there is a reason. You may not know the reason at that time, but there is a reason. After experiencing that, and with both scenarios, well, actually all three scenarios, the mortgage and the sowing seed into the praise-a-thon that time, the not receiving the checks, and also following through with the instructions and go bless her family, and by taking her to the grocery store, because I got specific instructions, and it helped ease the fact that the check situation wasn't something that I took personally. I just knew that it was a lesson to learn, because later on it may have been one of those situations again where it came up that God informed me something, and from the other end that it did not follow through, not to be taken by that, and not to be sad by it, but just to make sure that you are following through on his principles. And there are times when you may not hear the voice of the Lord, but there are principles that are established in the earth. The principle, I'll give you an example. This is a simple one. Gravity. That's a principle. Gravity is a principle. Water is a principle. Operating in respect is a principle. Morality is a principle. Following the laws of the land is a principle. Because if the speed says 65 miles per hour and you're deciding to go 85, there's a perspective that perhaps maybe you may not get pulled over by the police. But the principles you are breaking, and there's a chance you may get a ticket. So you could be following through on principles. I'm seeing people around the globe blessing Ukraine in ways that I would have never came up with. Like I read a story that the women left baby strollers at the port of Portland for the mothers. I read that this guy who has a clothing line created uniform for the army. That was so creative. These are gestures of principles of love and giving without even thinking about it. These are perspectives and direction. They just falling through on the principles that's already laid for us. And so I know a lot of people are not impacted by the Ukraine, but we're all impacted by it. The world came and supported the United States when they were going through all that racism in 2020. They were out marching, protesting with us. And I'm seeing the same thing in support of the United States and people around the globe supporting this incident that is going on right now, that is impacting all of us. So the title of our message today is perspective and direction. Knowing that you know that the communication in which you are leading yourself to sow a seed or bless somebody, that is solid, that you know that is solid. Because there's a principle about sowing seed, giving, and receiving, reciprocated. It's God's nature. He gave his son, and we received a blessing. It's the perspective, it's the principle, it's the directive, it's the direction. It is the love of God. And that's what I want to talk to you all about. And again, excuse my huffing and puffing, but I just did not want to not talk to you all while this was bubbling up in my spirit, my soul, my passion of what I do right now, because this is what I could give, is my perspective on a matter. You can take it however, or you not want to receive it. I don't know. But this is my perspective and direction for you all on the Sonia Buchanan Show. This is the end of our podcast, and I'm going to do probably 2 more laps because it's about 6:20, and hopefully I'm gonna try to do a run. But listen, you all, thank you so much for listening and not being annoyed of my huffing and puffing. This is also an impression that, yes, she does go walking, because we hear her huffing and puffing on her podcast. Although it's a little unprofessional, but sometimes you just got to do 2 things while you're doing one thing. But anyway, this is your girl, Sonya Buchanan, with the Sonya Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Remember, you guys, if you have been given an instruction to do something, do the instruction by faith. Confirm it with God if you're unsure, because when He gives you an instruction, there's a blessing that's tied to it. And when you are receiving a blessing, if you're not sure, confirm it with Him, because there's still a blessing. So you guys, I want you to have a good day. Remember, support us by going to our e-store so I can be a blessing as much as I can during this season. And thank you for listening. This is your girl, Monday morning, early. This is your girl, Sonya Buchanan, with the Sonya Buchanan Show. And I said this already. Well, we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Bye, you guys. Make it a good day.
Did you know by being the best you in just 60 seconds a day can add up to a positive, better you in a total of 365 minutes a year? That's 6 hours exactly. Be the best you, even if it's slowly achieved by seconds. You'll gain more to being a prosperous you. Remember, as you take steps, whether they're small or large, the end results will be surprisingly great. Visit us on comfortingpromises.com, and while you're there, visit our store with the latest products available.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. The podcast was produced and edited by Sonya Buchanan. For more information about the host, you can go to sonyabuchanan.com. For information about Comforting Promises broadcast community, you can go to comfortingpromises.com. Thank you for listening to our broadcast, The Sonya Buchanan Show, where we focus on one life, one smile at a time. Until next time, bye you guys.